Evening all. Now, I'm not going to waste any time here because you don't want to listen to me waffle. You want to hear what the guests have got to say tonight. If you're not familiar, before I bring them on very quickly, we have the host of the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast. Now, which is linked in the description, by the way, as is the YouTube channel that's associated with Brent. You will, if you've been in the kind of like conspiracy arena on YouTube, recognize this man here. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. I'm not going to spoil it by introducing him for himself. And we have Neil. So this is Brent and Neil. They have an absolutely fantastic podcast, and their story and what they've got to say is very, very interesting. We also have this man over here, the Conspiracist, who's been on a couple of times before, and he's always great to speak to. But what I really want from you guys is your questions to the guests tonight. I'm going to try and present them with as many of your questions as I possibly can, because it's probably not often that you get to ask questions to people who've been involved in the conspiracy world as deeply and as long as these two gentlemen have, outside of flat earth and young earth creationism. So I'm really, really hoping we'll get a lot out of this stream tonight. So please just tag me in at Culture Cats, and I'll put your questions on screen, and I'll fire them to our guests. One more time, the podcast is brilliant, and it is linked in the description. This is it on the screen. I'm going to bring them in one at a time. We will start with, let's start in order of how I've got the tabs ordered. So we'll start with Mr. Brent Lee. So there's Brent. We have his podcast co-host, Neil, and we have obviously everybody's favorite conspiracist, the Conspiracist, Steve. So listen, Neil, Brent, Steve, I hope you're all okay. I don't want to waste time with pleasantries. I know that sounds terrible, but your stories are so amazing. I want people to hear them and then be able to ask you questions. So if I just go top to bottom, maybe, Brent, it's a long story, a lot to unpack, but what can you unpack in maybe 2 minutes?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having us. It's good to speak to you again. The last time we spoke to you was on one of those Twitter spaces, and that was a lot of fun. I'm Brent Lee. I'm a former conspiracist of 15 years. From 2003 to 2018, I was completely consumed by what I call conspiracism, which is like a cult-like belief system, an ideology, if you will. And it was my worldview. I believed in the Illuminati, the New World Order. There was this secret, nefarious group, a network of secret societies and cults that were basically running the entire world. They ran the education system, the music industry, all the entertainment industry, the politics, name it, they ran it, basically. And we were enslaved on a prison planet. In 2018, I got out of it. A bunch of stuff happened in the real world that we can't really get into right now in a quick 2-minute introduction. But basically, I started to see that the real world wasn't reflective of my beliefs. And eventually, it took a few years to fall apart, but it did. And now I'm trying to show other conspiracists how to take it all apart.
And and we will obviously, as the stream goes on, get more into the past, and stuff. But I've got a feeling every time you're on a podcast, something, you'll be asked the same questions over. And I thought, well, let's maybe skip a little bit. But we will get into it more deeply as time goes on. Neil,
hello.
A bit about yourself, please, sir.
Well, I was also really into conspiracies. Basically, I somehow managed to get myself to be a bit of a sort of known figure within it. And so off the back of that, I've worked with people like Richard D. Hall and David Icke and various other people like that, and had a lot of interactions with them. I was rather similar to Brent. I was quite just enamored with the whole thing. Just it informed my entire worldview. You get to the point where basically everything is viewed through this lens of conspiracy. Like, these levels of what you believe and stuff like that. But somebody, Poker Politics said this really quite clever thing is that basically once you start believing things like, once you open the door to, well, they could do this, like if they assassinated JFK, for example, then it opens the door to basically, well, if that's possible, everything's possible. And so it really can alter the way that you think about things. And then I started to get bored with it a little bit, to be honest, and noticed discrepancies, noticed things that didn't add up, and noticed that people were being quite badly manipulated by figures within the conspiracy world, and more often than not, something that had started off that was just kind of a bit fun, like we're looking at the world in a different way, we're anti-authoritarian, we're fighting for a better world and stuff like that. It got to be a bit sinister, to be quite honest, and go in directions that I completely didn't agree with, and so I sort of got out of it. Luckily, managed to meet Brent, and it was strange because we were both sort of like had sort of slightly different trajectories, but we're on the sort of similar sort of path, and we just collided, and decided to sort of like start working together.
And we'll get on to the collaboration, the podcast as well, for sure, later on. I'm going to try and keep this nice and neat and tidy down to about an hour, because I'm a bit curious, a bit aware sometimes on my replays when I do a stream, because I end up waffling a lot, etc. People can switch off, but I think this is going to be a quite an important podcast. So I'll try and keep it nice and neat. Steve, you've been on before. You are an absolute legend, the conspiracist himself. But go on, what have you got to say?
Thanks for having me on, first and foremost, and it's good to speak to everyone again. My name's Steve. I'm an actor. I've written a show about conspiracy theorists. I don't come from a background of conspiracism or having seen too much until I started writing about it. But now I've been following it for about sort of 5-6 years, I suppose. I'm an observer, and I don't come from a place where I like ridiculing them. It's more, I find it quite a fascinating subject. Just the human psychology side of things, I suppose, is the best way to put it. That's sort of what I'm doing in a nutshell. And as everyone here will know, I've got a show that I've been working on for a few years now that's about to be released any day now, really. Probably about 10 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks is when we're going to see that. So, I'm just here to have a chat, really.
And we'll see a clip of that later on. I've seen a comment I want to put to you as a question, and I'll just bring the comment up. In fact, sorry, I see spin. I'm sure this will get touched on as well. I mean, I don't really make a big fuss of this, but I have a friend who, has lost contact with his parents, because of certain beliefs, etc. And it's sad to see. A bit of love for you there. Now, I want to bring this up as a question from Dr. Nimrod. I put it out to just chat about it. I won't go down the list, so to speak, but where does it begin, right? So Dr. Nimrod here says he's not a conspiracist, but using conspiracies to engage in thought experiments is rather fun. And when I was a kid, I used to love reading books of conspiracy stories. And I didn't necessarily believe them. Some things I was a bit naive because I was very young, and I didn't know any better. But I didn't necessarily believe the conspiracy theories. But I always had an interest. I was always like, well, let's. When YouTube came out, even when I was like in my early 20s, let's watch this video on JFK. Let's watch this video on this, because I found them interesting and used them as a source of like entertainment. But, I never kind of fell down that kind of like rabbit hole. So what are your thoughts on promoting this entertainment side of, what if this, what if that? Do you think that is the beginning of a funnel, or is that all right? I mean, I don't know if I've articulated that right, but what are your guys' thoughts on this?
I still enjoy a conspiracy theory. I still enjoy entertainment that is about conspiracy theories or conspiracies. I do enjoy that type of stuff. But like, to the person's question, they were talking about they enjoy it as a thought experiment, and you were asking where the line is between maybe having that thought experiment and manipulating the world. Is internalizing that conspiracy theory and like thinking about it on a philosophical level. Cool, fun, no worries. Externalizing it, speaking it into the world, trying to manipulate another person into believing this thing so that you can control them. That's the line.
Would you say that's in a different position for everybody? in terms of how easily they get to that point?
Well, I suppose it depends on what you're using the conspiracies for. Like, do you know what I mean? Because there is actually, it is a good idea to be skeptical, like, and to, like, for example, be aware that, like, be skeptical of the state, for example. And I don't mean in a sort of like they're coming to kill us in the middle of the night, just in a way that there's corruption. Like, we looked with COVID and stuff like that, and all the sort of the VIP lanes and stuff like that. There are conspiracies that happen. Like, there was, organizations like Palantir or Cambridge Analytica or something like that. They're influencing people and trying to mess with people. There are organizations like the Atlas Network and stuff that breed political dissent in countries that just so happen to have oil in them and things like that. So this is the thing, and so there is always a healthy skepticism. The strange thing with the conspiracies, I think, Brent, it might be slightly different now, but when we first got into it, there's a big dip between the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, blah, 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 blah. And then you have to go quite underground to get into your sort of New World Order things and your Illuminati stuff. Like, we had to send away for books and DVDs and stuff that would take like 2-3 weeks to arrive. I think that's a lot more immediate now.
They would take like 2 to 3 weeks to download over dial-up.
Yeah, exactly. So that it can be different for different people. I think it's when the conspiratorial world, or the way that makes you frame the world, when that becomes more attractive than reality, that's when it becomes a problem. When people start to say, they start to use the concept of conspiracism as like, well, it doesn't matter about this. It doesn't matter about my job. It doesn't matter about my family. It doesn't matter about this because I've got more important fish to fry. I'm fighting the Illuminati. And that's kind of the tipping point where it becomes more than just an interest. It becomes like an identity.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it gets dangerous.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
Steve, you got anything to? I know you're coming from a different angle, but have you got anything you want to add to that? Or,
I mean, yeah, I know a lot of people who like to entertain the idea of some conspiracies, but just as like a thought experiment. And it's what you said then, Neil, about the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. It's one thing having a thought about that.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily impact the way you see the world, but when you think there's some massive organization that's completely manipulating everything that you've always thought of reality, it actually starts to affect your emotional state on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference between those two things.
That's exactly it, because people get to the point where everything and anything that happens is the Illuminati, is the New World Order, is something like that. So every time there's a school shooting, they're clearly mind controlled. We don't know any of the details yet. We don't know anything about it, but it's definitely this because that's what fits into this. Whenever there's a terrorist action, it's not a terrorist action. It's either dupes or it's fake or it's CIA or MI5 or something like that. Anytime that basically you see something happen on the news, you go, well, if it's on the news, if the news is telling me that there's a deadly virus out there and I should probably get a vaccine, then the opposite is true. And that's where
it serves a different purpose.
Yeah. And that's where
the other one as well.
One, isn't it? I saw someone the other day tweeting about nuclear weapons being a psyop and like Hiroshima.
Yeah. Everything's fake. Dinosaurs are fake. Volcanoes are fake. Apparently, like why? I've got no idea. But yeah,
it's got to be for everything else to make sense. It has to be. It gets to the point, doesn't it?
No. Well, but again, this is the point. When you're doing that, when you're trying to dismiss reality, like, I mean, I'm going a bit, perhaps I'm being a bit sort of blunt and going too far here, but like flat Earth, for example, I've said this a few times, right? Okay, like if you need the world to be flat and everyone else to be fundamentally wrong about something as basic as the shape of the planet that we're on, then all that criticism that people had, that the wider world had of you before, obviously is wrong, because they don't even know what the fucking shape of the planet is, right? Okay, like, and when they see that I'm right, they'll get rid of all that previous like things that they'll say about me. They'll realize that I'm actually a worthy person, and maybe Sandra will let me see the kids. And that's a problem, really. It's a sort of oppositional defiance to the point where you feel so rejected by reality that you reject reality and start to bring in all these things that build a narrative that supports your actions and the way that your life has turned out, essentially. And obviously there's degrees of that. Like it can you know, it can get really bad though. And yeah, that's how bad it can get.
So how sorry, I should thank Present 99 again very much for gifting some memberships. There will be some membership content coming out tomorrow for new members. If you check out the member tab and check out to find the members Discord. But thank you again, Present 99. Very, very kind. Thank you very much. Now you've all said there about, you know, believing, you know, if the news says this, the opposite is true, or you know, you have this, or the news serves a different purpose, etc. I hope this question makes sense. But when you're in that world, where do you get your confidence from? So, like for example, this friend of mine is a big believer in chemtrails and aluminium being sprayed out the sky, etc. And I've never had a first-hand conversation with him, but I have had second-hand conversations where I've passed messages on to him to another friend. You know, we don't live in the same town anymore. As a science teacher, trying to say, listen, you know me, you know, I've got a background in science. I've taught science for 20 years. Here's how you test for these ions. Here's the you know, the natural abundance of these metals that you're talking about. I've talked to him about conservation of mass. How can a plane, you know, create such huge clouds on it? And he knows that, I mean, he's a tradesman and he doesn't have like that kind of background in science, yet he's so unbelievably confident that his version is right. So where does that confidence come from, even in the face of people who actually probably do know better?
Well, I mean, it's twofold. It's one, because you've got previous times when you were right, like, but often these won't necessarily be right. But, you know, for example, we know about JFK. And we know about the Gulf of Tonkin, and we know about XYZ. And if they would do that, then they could do this. And so that kind of informs you. You're also sort of, you kind of, you spot patterns, you see symbols and stuff. And really, this is just pareidolia, okay? Because it's one of these things where if you want to look for something, you will find something that is connected to it. We talked about this on our Richard D. Hall thing. If you want to look for evidence that Brent is a girl, I can find loads of evidence that Brent is a girl. He's got lovely soft skin, he's got lovely long hair, and he's very, very soft spoken. All those things are indicative that he's a girl. So I've got three really strong bits of evidence there that Brent's a girl. He's not. It's nonsense. But if you go that angle, then that's why you have this confidence. And the other confidence is an appeal to authority, particularly with the chemtrails thing. Chemtrails started in the 90s.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, chemtrails started in the 90s with some people that seemingly had good experimental data. They basically went and they went and got snow and water samples and found that they were had a high aluminium content. But what they didn't realize was that basically the snow was dirty snow that had been skied over a huge amount of times, and the water was actually sludge water and had got a lot of soil in it. And what they were detecting was not the metal aluminium, it was the inner and relatively harmless mineral aluminium, which is fairly ubiquitous in soil. Like, you know, if you do a sort of XRF sample or anything, if you've ever had to use one of those, and you get sand and stuff, a lot of what you're finding there is lots of aluminium and stuff like that. So so there's the appeal to authority. There's this kind of idea that basically that you've got these hits in the past, this proven track record of success. And then there's the idea that basically, like, anything that sort of counters your thoughts, you go, well, that's disinformation, isn't it? Like, I see what they're trying to do. It's a cover up. They're trying to hide it. It might well appear like that I'm wrong, but no, they're just trying to muddy the waters there. And the actual truth is something far more complicated that we have this special knowledge about.
Can I throw my 2 cents in?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm all here to listen to you guys, not me. You crack on.
see, this is why I often compare it to a cult-like an ideology, is because we look at these alternative experts who I think are like cult recruiters, you know, and our ideas are enforced by these people, and they're enforced by the cult and our community around us, all enforcing the same kind of belief that, yeah, we all know the truth, this secret that no one else knows about, who's really running the world. You know, that's what I think gives us the confidence. That's what gave me the confidence as a conspiracist. The community, the truthers that were around me, the people that spoke with authority, that came on with wearing suits and telling us all these things, like acting like they were like learned and they had been kicked out of society because they were telling the truth. And so that's why we gravitated towards them. And to me, them mixed with the community, the cult, is what gave me the confidence to not believe what like the mainstream was saying. Also, automatically they're lying to us. It's what the cult leaders are saying.
And ultimately it's a righteous mission, because like you're not getting into it to go, oh, this will be a great way to, once I've learned all this law, to con people in 5 years time. No, you're getting into this when you get into it because you want to help people, and you are acutely aware of injustices in the world, and you don't want those injustices. And a lot of it like ties in with like the hero's journey and stuff like that. There's this secret cabal of people that are doing horrible satanic rituals, sometimes involving children, and like all the authorities are involved, and nobody's listening to you. It's like being in like They Live, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or something like that. And that is a very, very powerful drive, particularly if you've not got a huge amount of and I don't mean this in a horrible way. I mean, like, life can be mundane, because life is mundane. Like, I don't like my job. I'm in an unsatisfying relationship. I'm not making as much money. I don't feel appreciated. My band's going nowhere. But all of a sudden, that doesn't matter, because I'm kind of in the mindset that there's this huge conspiracy going on that very few people are interested in. And it's fascinating to learn about it, because here's the other thing as well, is like, and you don't notice this until afterwards, but you pick and choose which bits that you go, well, that's bullshit. But I can believe that. I can believe all the mind control stuff, and I can believe the satanic ritual stuff and the cults and stuff, because there's some sort of evidence about various people that might sort of tie in with this and stuff like that. I reject the flat earth and the hollow earth and that, because that's stupid. That's silly. And so it's almost like a sort of choose your own adventure thing, where you're building up this picture of things until you've got this sort of constructed world that you live in which you're essentially top of the hill, like, really, because you've got all the knowledge.
I love that choose your own adventure thing. We're seeing that. We'll talk about the final experiment, which is one of the reasons I'm so chuffed to speak to you, because there are people now leaving certain conspiracies because of this trip to Antarctica that went on in December. And but anyway, the choose your own like path thing. That's what we're seeing now. This community is becoming very fragmented, and some people are saying, "Oh, the flat earthers who went to Antarctica, actually, what they saw was a laser projection of the sun." And anyone who says anything different, anyone who says they were in a film studio, are idiots. And then you've got people saying, "Well, obviously, a laser projection of the sun is just moronic. They were obviously in a film studio." And then you've got other people more on a religious side, who are saying, "Well, you're all wrong. They were down there, but actually, Satan pretended to be the
devil.
sun." Yeah,
devil. Bloody devil.
The shining one. Love it.
It is crazy. But another thing you said earlier on as well, and then I think there's some questions in the chat. You did say that being surrounded like by that cult give you the confidence, and it made me think. A friend of mine called Ranty, who was kind of like in this community for a long time, is no longer. He kind of like left the flat earth belief, and he did that all on his own. But he told me in a conversation recently that the reason he could make that decision was because he had a falling out with like I don't know if you're aware of people like Nathan Oakley or, you know, his like little flat earth team, if you like.
Yeah.
And he was doing a podcast with me at the time. It was a paranormal podcast where I would play the skeptic and he would play the believer, and we'd bounce ideas off each other. And he'd spend more time talking to me, very little time talking to them. And it was nothing to do with me, but he said it was the fact that I wasn't speaking to them. I wasn't surrounded by it. I could get back to normality. And then, you know, kind of like the hold and the veil seemed to drop.
Yeah. I suppose it's like anything, right? Okay, you immerse yourself more in things if you've got gaps elsewhere. And I know we're saying like I'm quite conscious that we're making it sound like, oh, cult behavior and blah 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 blah. It don't feel like that. It doesn't feel like that at all. Like it feels like you've met a group of open-minded people. That it took me years, even after it took me until I actually met some of the sort of higher echelons where I went, oh yeah, you don't buy it. This is still nonsense. You're a con man. Like, do you know what I mean? Because that's not the thing, that you're all this sort of you're the rebels in Star Wars. Like, do you know what I mean? Like going against insurmountable odds, and you know that's it. And so there is a real camaraderie and community in it.
You're the heroes in your own story, almost.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
Steve, I'm going to come to you on this one, actually, just see what you think. What do you think of the world's most richest man? I assume they're not talking about me there. Working together with the world's most powerful man. What do you think about that?
They're talking about both of us, aren't they? me and Neil.
Surely, from an entertainment point of view, I think there's going to be some good TV in this. But it's not so great when it's. I can't see it lasting. And I've only really recently seen how bad Musk seems to be getting. I mean, I've heard people's opinions for a while now, but I've still yet to draw my conclusions. But like some of he's losing it, I think, a bit. I don't think his ego and Trump's is going to be compatible, but I am a bit concerned about how he wants to have robots in everyone's house, and he seems to make these rash promises that he can be the savior of mankind, and people are buying it. I literally think it's a business decision from him. He's gone like, right, who will believe me, hook, line, and sinker? Trump fans. So, and Trump's just like, I reckon Trump's literally gone to him like, I don't know what I'm doing, Elon. If you can do it for me, or at least look like I'm doing something, how about I let you have some special permissions? And he's gone, yeah, all right. And I just reckon it's a mutual back scratching thing, to be honest. But I can't see it lasting. I don't know. Maybe they're both narcissists, but they're also probably both smart enough to realise that they need one another. So they might be able to. I don't know.
You mentioned it's going to be great entertainment, and it already has been. Have you all seen the video of Elon Musk's kid in the Oval Office? Have you seen that? Telling Trump
to shut his fucking mouth because he's not the president. Yeah,
that's brilliant. And sorry, Brent Neil as well. Like, do you think the fact that those two are working together, is that like fuel on the fire to some people with certain beliefs, or is that just half the course?
Before Neil goes off, because Neil's got a few a few opinions on this. The fact of Trump becoming president in the first place was actually one of the reasons why I came out of the conspiracy world, because I started to see people like him and his supporters using the conspiracy tropes basically to get people on board. And then all of my conspiracist friends were also supporting him, and this was really, really, really confusing to me, because I couldn't understand how they didn't see that he was one of the elites. Like, even take away all the Illuminati type of stuff, like he is still an elite, like he is one of the top, like he's a rich guy, right? And now he's a president. So I'm still confused how conspiracists still support him and now support the world's richest man who has like the biggest social media website and can influence so many people.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not see it? Like, just on a conspiracy level, like, you can keep all your conspiracy theories, right? Keep all of those beliefs, but how do you not see that these two people are playing you?
Yeah.
Really,
If that's the thing,
that's my
these days.
biggest question about the whole thing. And now Neil's got the rest of it. You smash it, mate.
Neil, before you jump in, because I know I've got a feeling this is going to be a big montage, and I'm looking for monologue, and I'm looking forward to hearing it. I do just want to not forget to thank Second Best Bob though, and to remind us why it's so important what you did. You know, he had a mate who boasted about not wearing masks, etc., calling the pandemic the pandemic. He believes in a lot more, and now his wife has left him. And I am going to touch on, if it's all right with you two later on, I'm going to touch on to like the personal aspect of it with you. But
Absolutely.
But thank you for that, Second Best Bob. But now it is the Neil Sanders versus Trump monologue. Off you go.
I mean, right. There is actually a bit of a schism, like in the conspiracy world at the minute, right? Because Alex Jones is just pandering to everything that Trump does and everything that Elon does. And they're doing some things that are fundamentally against what Alex Jones should believe in. Anti-constitutionalism, anti-sovereignty stuff, militarization of the police. These are all things that have been the mainstay of Alex Jones's whole ideology for years, and he's just completely turned his back on it. Like, interestingly as well, Alex Jones basically got tapped up by Russian intelligence in 2015, and since then was very, very Putin, but very pro-Putin. But that's another story. Basically, what we're witnessing. David Icke, by the way, although he spent years trying to pander to Trump, you see what happened was there's this ecosystem. The right wing, and particularly the far right, is quite attractive to people because it basically makes you superior to everybody just by existing. And psychologically, that appeals to broken people. And there's a lot of broken people that need propping up. And so then you got this sort of ecosystem of your Calvin Robinsons and your Lawrence Foxes and your Leilani Dowdings, and this shift towards believing that Hitler might be right, and Zionist organized government and stuff like this that was really, really prevalent in the conspiracy world. And the majority of people basically have sort of fallen for it hook, line and sinker, and think that it's fabulous because RFK is anti-vax and Elon's apparently anti-elite. And because he's got loads of money, he probably don't want any more money. So, you know, that's the attitude. What my take on it is, and I'll be very clear on this, is fascism. This is absolutely the rise of fascism. This is fascism that is driven by think tanks that have an ideological, white supremacist, evangelical, Christian outlook, like the Heritage Foundation and the Council for National Policy. It's connected to people that have extremely right-wing views and want to have a merger of government and corporations, which is by definition fascism, based and predicated on the idea of this idea of hyper nationalism, based on the concept that immigrants are like an invading force or a disease that is ruining or diluting the culture. It's concepts around strongman imagery. It's concepts around low regulation of government, and removal of workers' rights, removal of safety nets, removal of healthcare, removal of unions, and anything like that. And it's all driven by these same people who've got this ideological business concept, and it's sold to people because I hate to say it, but a lot of people take a great pleasure in seeing other people suffer, and that is what they're preying on. They're preying on this really base idea that you can be the bully. You can be the bully, right? And we can couch that in, we're not the bully. We're being righteous. This is about free speech. This is about culture. This is about preserving things that are important. And it's all based on this false idea, this mythical past, this idea of going back and making America great again, taking England to its glory days, blah, 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 all this. And it's nonsense. It's all lies. It's absolute lies. And the galling thing about it is that they're just such greasy, obvious con men. Like Trump is just, it's just full of shit. He's an absolute just appalling human being. Elon Musk is a con man. All of his wealth is based on lying about something, but getting loans off the back of that line, failing upwards, and basically exploiting people. And now we've got in a position where basically an unelected person with huge conflicts of interest and business interests, who's got very, very shady. The reason that Elon Musk couldn't get top classified clearance, right? He can't see some of the stuff that's in the Treasury, okay, because he was vetted by the American Secret Service and found that his connections to Putin and other despots and his drug use and insane behavior made it that he was not a suitable candidate for that. And this is a person that is now basically in charge of all sorts of things, takes millions and billions through different companies of subsidies every year, like working for a man who is, let's not muck about, right? Okay, a rapist and a con man and a felon who tried to take over America with a violent coup d'etat, right? These are the people that are now in charge. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is just, it beggars belief. But you know, hopefully we might get some good punk bands out of it. That's the best we can hope for. So, but the reason it is so insane. This is why we're doing our series at the minute. It was called "This Is Fine." These are the ones that are on the screen at the minute. It's now called "The World According to Some," which obviously the acronym for that is TWATS, which we found was to be very, very sort of apt for the current state of being.
That was well worth it. I'm going to play devil's advocate in a second with a question. But first of all, just a couple of comments I just want to thank people for. Thank you, IC Spin. It's sunk cost fallacy to some degree, I think. I'm not sure how long ago that was left, so I'm not sure what bit that was relating to, but thank you very much. And also, Present 99, thank you, sir. Musk is a threat to the world. Because of his help, it's very likely that a right-wing party in Germany will be very strong in the upcoming election, and this is bad, very bad. Humans are stupid. Well, yes, humans are stupid. Definitely give you that. Here's if you're leaving questions in the chat, can you tag me so it shows up on the screen? Because I feel like I've got lots of questions I want to ask, but really this is your stream, your chance to get your questions asked in. But I don't want to miss them because I'm not tagged in. So please just tag in at Culture Cats, and I'll prioritize your questions over mine. So apologies if you've asked something and I haven't seen it. It just doesn't highlight itself on my screen if you don't tag me. Here's my devil's advocate. We all know RFK's kind of views on vaccines and things like that, and what he's kind of led people to believe is going to happen, what he's led people to believe is going to uncover. And I think we all know that what he thinks is going to happen, what he thinks he's going to be able to uncover, isn't going to materialize, and the decisions he says he's going to make will only lead to bad results. Could this actually be like a wake-up call on a mass scale for these people that no? Oh, okay, go on.
Sorry, no. We watched. This is what amazes me is the fact that we watched the first Trump term and we watched everything go to shit, and then everyone went, "Oh, we'll try that again, shall we?" Like Trump was so very unpopular that Joe Biden got in, right? That's how unpopular he was, right? Okay, and then everyone went, "Oh yeah, no, eggs are quite expensive, aren't they?" The irony of which is that basically, like, yeah, like it's ridiculous. Maybe actually, though, because but only to the people who will directly suffer. Right. Okay. Yeah. Like this is the sad thing is that when people find that they can't afford their insulin, when people find that their uncle's been deported, when people find that basically like, you know, being bullied because you're trans or don't have access to certain things that you would have before, then and only then. There's been an example of it. There's been some people, like there was one who's a sort of prominent MAGA TikToker, and her husband's been deported. Now, ironically, the reason that her husband was deported, is an English gentleman, was because he refused to get the COVID vaccine, and because he didn't have a full vaccination schedule, you've got to go back to England. So there are this is the point. There's going to be massive consequences for people, but people will do incredible gymnastics, mental gymnastics, to avoid believing that they were conned. Like it's a sad state of human beings, I'm afraid.
I
Well, you
do
do.
want
You
to
don't
get.
want to admit that you were lied to, do you? It's not
No.
something that is like a fun thing to do.
Especially because basically part of the ironically, part of the thing about going into, say, conspiracies or going into, say, support of Donald Trump or something like that is to acknowledge that, oh, I was lied to. I was wrong about this before and they're right. So to do that again, because you've done that massive psychological upheaval. And again, the thing with Trump, the problem with Trump is that basically he gives people an identity. That's the most important thing that he gives people. Similar to conspiracy, it gives people an identity where they didn't have an identity. Yesterday, you're just Bubba who lives in buttfuck Idaho. Right? Okay. Today, you're a proud MAGA warrior, right? You can apply that to lots and lots of things, but that is essentially what we're seeing here. Like it's and it's wrestling. It is. It is literally wrestling. Like I mean that seriously. Like the Trump organization was explicitly involved with the McMahon organization for years. Stephanie McMahon helped out on his initial campaign, and she's now shutting down the Department of Education, which is, that there's a message in there somewhere, isn't there? Like, do you know what I mean? That's crazy.
We've got a few questions to get through. I'll get Brent. I'll go to you on this one. What is your goal? Well, both of you, but start with Brent on this one. What is your goal with your podcast? Is it just awareness or more?
It's multi-layered. We started out basically when me and Neil decided to make the podcast. We said, "Hey, let's actually do our research. Let's look at a conspiracy theory that we believed in, and let's see what was wrong with it. Let's do this for us. Let's get the facts right in our own mind. Let's like I said, just let's go dig into each one and see exactly what was right and what was wrong about it." So we kind of just we're doing that at first, but then we felt like, oh, let's open it up more. Keep doing that, but open it up more and start speaking to more people who are involved in, say, the conspiracy journalism or disinformation, things like that, basically. And yeah, it's just, I think what we wanted to do is what we're trying, our big goals really are to inform people about these things, what it's like to believe it as a conspiracist. We are trying to share our very unique perspectives of being conspiracists. This is what it's like to believe it. This is why someone believes it. And hopefully that, resonates with people who have someone else who's down that rabbit hole, and they can go, oh, that's why they believe it. It's not because they're an idiot. It's a very, very good reason why. So we're trying to share that, and we're trying to share the information, and we're trying to raise awareness of this. And on a personal level, what I'm really trying to do is offer hope to people who, like I said, have someone down the rabbit hole. As far down as they go, someone can still come out just like me. I was really down, and the whole point of me ever coming out and speaking out is to offer that hope. Say they're not lost forever. Just keep hope.
But the kind of thing that we do is we try and approach topics with the same, remembering what was the things that got us into and interested and sort of fascinated with conspiracy theories, and applying that same sort of almost insane, feverish sort of attention to detail and picking things apart and finding the reason and finding the source and finding this. And what we're finding is that basically the conspiracy behind the conspiracy is often more interesting than the original conspiracy. How somebody got to think that Bohemian Grove was Moloch, say. There's a fascinating backstory to that, of how the misinformation got out there. That's far more interesting than this idea of fat Republicans getting naked and having gay sex in the woods. It's that's it. So that's what we try and do. Make it entertaining, make it funny, but make it sort of interesting as well. But ultimately, we're in it for the bitches and the money.
Like this, I'm going to come to you, Steve, for this next one, just for your view on observing the community. Then I'll pass it on to the lads. It's claimed that the basis for practically every conspiracy is anti-Semitism. I've certainly seen that in my comments. We'll start with you on that one. What have you seen to lead you to believe or not believe that?
Say that again, sorry.
So it was this one. It's claimed that the basis for practically every conspiracy is anti-Semitism. What's your opinion on that? Have you seen evidence for that? Do you think it's widespread?
I can see why that conclusion would be drawn. It does feel like it sometimes. It does feel like me and a couple of my mates joke about it. It's just like, it's always the Jews they're blaming it on, isn't it? But I mean, I think you could find a few that didn't go back to that. But then again, I think there's probably someone somewhere for every conspiracy that would blame the Jews. Yeah, it is something I have noticed.
It's I've seen it in my comments. You get a lot of a lot of people putting the word Jew into words that don't have it in there, like constantly all the time. It's not YouTube, it's Jew, and it's like,
well, it started right. Okay, it goes back to two things, right? One, the sort of Christian concept that Jews are Christ killers, and two, the blood libel, which is the idea that they put blood into cakes and eat it, right? Okay, to like, and it's all that's the sort of thing. But through that, you get the sort of the adrenochrome things and stuff like that. Concepts of sort of tentacle and reptilians can be tied back to concepts of Jewish sort of influence over the world. But essentially, most of it boils back to about two documents or three documents, really. Like there's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a fake document that was created by Russian secret intelligence to be able to allow them to persecute Jews by suggesting that there was a world idea that Jews were trying to take over surreptitiously. And often the reason that Jews are scapegoats is because basically up until 1948 there was no Jewish homeland. So you can't have a go at the French because France will invade. You can't have a go at the Spanish because the Spanish will invade. You can have a go at the Romans, you can have a go at gays, and you can have a go at Jews because they don't have an army to fight you. So they're always a useful other that can be used and have been used throughout immemorial. And so this is where you get this concept of like, well, I have been kicked out of every nation that they've ever been in because they've got no ability to fight back. You can't kick the French out because the French will fight back. That's the sort of concept. So you've got the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a fake document. Then Hitler got the ideas that were kind of couched in maybe things like Blavatsky and stuff like that to a degree. He misunderstood Nietzsche with the concept of the Superman, and he started this idea that communism was Jewish as well. And through the Nazi regime came the Rothschild, which was a propaganda film that basically gave the concept that the Rothschilds were these massively wealthy people that controlled aspects of banking all across the world and were behind every conflict. Specifically, they were blaming them for the Treaty of Versailles and stuff like that. And this film was based on this pamphlet called the Satan pamphlet. And the Satan pamphlet is where you get the concept that one of the Rothschilds, and it changes depending on who you hear it, was at Waterloo. And they managed to get back to England before all the other messengers, some by bribing a boat, some by just having messengers and whatnot. But they got back, lied, said that Waterloo was fallen. And so they managed to basically short the pound and buy the entirety of the Bank of England, only later to discover, we lied, and now we own everything, and we're the secret controlling influence behind the world. And so the Rothschilds banking, the concept of the Illuminati, the concept of sort of world communism, the concept of, which is very, very prevalent at the minute, particularly in MAGA concepts. They're very terrified of communism. And all of these things are based in or encoded or over anti-Semitism. And this is the problem, that basically, like, The Satan pamphlet, for example, was completely false. It was absolute nonsense. And the writer of it, whose name escapes me at the minute, wrote it to smear the Rothschilds because he blamed them for a train crash. You see, the Rothschild owned this particular line of train, and there was a crash on it. And I believe he lost a family member or whatever. He was aggrieved. And so in order to smear the Rothschilds, he created this myth of Waterloo and their banking supremacy. That became tied into the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, taking on board blood libels from sort of medieval Christianity. Hitler then managed to tie that into communism, and the whole thing was then repeated by people like Nestor Webster, and the non-dare call it conspiracy, and lots of people are into this concept of Zionist organized government, and that became law within the conspiracy world. So when David Icke is talking about Rothschild's banking, he's talking about a Nazi canard. Whether he should, he's been talking about it for 30 years. We've found out where it came from. He should have done his due diligence. But this is the problem, is that basically a huge amount of things were based in these original documents. And so there is a huge amount of anti-Semitism within the conspiracy world, but a lot of people don't know that they're being anti-Semitic and don't think for a second that they are. And if they genuinely thought that they were being, they'd be horrified by that. On the other hand, there are just a lot of people that genuinely just think it's the Jews.
That's excellent. I mean, you guys really are, as you can tell, thoroughly researched. I was going to say that listening to the podcast as well, you can tell just how deep. I was listening to Richard D. Hall part 1 earlier on today, and you know even in the first few minutes where you were tying together Alex Jones and Richard D. Hall and all tracing it back to the same person. Really, really, really well done. Now, I am acutely aware it is 8:55, and I did promise that I wouldn't keep you more than an hour. I do have another question I want to get to, and I do want to talk about Steve's Conspiracist movie, which should be out soon, but I will let Steve mention that when we get to that bit. So I'm going to ask one more question, and feel free to tell me to piss off, and you don't have to answer it. And then we'll get to Steve. The question is this. Honestly, feel free, because you'll have gone through this so many times in other places, but I do think it's an important thing. During your time, kind of like being involved in conspiracy theories, how much do you think that actually impacted your future life prospects? You know, where do you think you will be now compared to where you might have been without them? How did it impact your relationships? And do you have strong regrets about things you may have, said to people online, like in a comment section or just your feelings of how that went? And you don't have to answer any of that. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do the downer and let Neil pick it up. Yeah, to me, like I can only speak personally, but I do think it definitely informed my life and shaped how my life would turn out. I didn't focus on a career properly. I was a musician. I decided not to get signed by any record labels because they were the Illuminati, they were satanic. I decided to go independent, but I didn't get a mortgage, and I didn't get a real job, and I didn't do a lot of things because I thought the New World Order was coming. These people run everything. At some point, the police state is going to come in, and I need to get out of here. So I need to be ready to go. I shouldn't have a family. There's all that kind of stuff, and then there's the other real world stuff as well. Of when I first started to get into it, my friends didn't want to really talk about it, so I isolated myself from my friends, from this massive social group that I had, again in the band sphere, so I lost lots of friends because of it. and it wasn't because like they didn't like me anymore. It's just because I felt like we didn't gel anymore, and I needed to kind of pull myself away from everyone. I do wonder what my life would have been like without it, but I'm a strong believer in not having any regrets. Like the life I lived up until today made me the person I am today, you know, and as long as I learned from everything, as long as I can pick myself up and move forward, then there's no point having a regret over it. So I'm fine with all that. I've never been a very aggressive person, so I've never really like left horrible comments or sent nasty things to people. I did like call a few politicians New World Order shills on social media, but nothing like nothing terrible, you know. So I don't have any regrets that way either.
Cool. Yeah, and I am sorry to ask the question, because I feel like probably it's not, you know, like fishing for bad news and stuff. But
I think it's important to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, people need to hear that this is what happens. Like if you go 15 years into it, so from basically from I think it was 25, let's say 25 to 40. Like that's how far that's like years that I should have been actually focusing on like my future. I've got no pension. I've got no mortgage. I'm like, do you know what I mean? Like, and people need to understand that you could actually be ruining your life by doing this stuff, by thinking this fantasy. And that's like another reason why I want to speak out. I want these people to stop believing fairy tales. Get on with real life.
Excellent. What about yourself, Neil?
Well, I mean, to be honest, not really. Although the regrets would be some of the things you just look back and just think, and some of them are on film, that you just go, oh, that's oh, that's embarrassing. I really got that wrong, didn't I? Like, God, what the hell was I thinking at that point? And also, there's a very real realization that I must have been absolutely insufferable at times, just rattling on at people and so. I mean, I still do that anyway, right? Okay, but at least it's not about like aliens or like the fact that the government wants to kill everybody or anything like that. It's usually about black metal or something ridiculous and obscure. But so there's that aspect of it. The weird things, and what are the weird things? We've spoken about this on the thing. It's like we avoided certain clothes because we felt that they were they were either there was kind of several things. There were one that there were sort of embodiments of corporatism and corporate America, and like that's the elites and stuff like that. And two, because of like sort of like connections to sort of shady Illuminati figures or even symbolism and stuff like that. And I've talked about this on the podcast, but the first time I actually went and bought some Nikes and just went, no, I don't need that responsibility in my life. Like, I don't need to feel the weight of the guilt of the world. I can have some shoes that I like. And I hate to do an advertisement for them, but they were the most comfortable and best shoes I've ever had in my entire life.
You can buy them in an affiliate link in the description.
Absolutely. And if you use the promo code someday. No, luckily not. Although there are some regrets as to like, obviously we've had some fallings out with people that used to be colleagues, etc., and stuff like that, and that's not good. It's not what we intended, obviously, but it's sometimes a consequence, isn't it? So
can I quickly elaborate on the wearing symbolism in clothes? Like this is a true story. Like I would not wear Nike because the swoosh to me was symbolism of the god Saturn, and if I died wearing a Nike swoosh, then my soul would be bound to Saturn and it wouldn't go to like God.
Wow.
So and that ruled my life for years. I kind of still only really wear like know symbols. I'm not scared of it anymore, but most of my wardrobe is pretty much just blank because of that.
Wow.
And I would go so far as to not even send Christmas cards if they had 5-pointed stars on them, because I thought they were pentagrams. If they were upside down, they were satanic pentagrams. If they were the right side up, then it was Wiccan witchcraft. And I would not send anyone a Christmas card if it had a 5-pointed star on it. Try and find a Christmas card without stars on it.
Yeah, yes, that's not easy.
I've got a slightly different angle on that, because I've got certain like witchcrafty things tattooed on me, and sigilly things, and I've also got the sigil of Saturn on the back of my leg there. Okay, and the reason I've got it is for a really stupid, lame joke. Get thee behind me, Saturn. Doesn't even make sense, but it amused me enough to get a tattoo. Right, but I was so worried that wearing shorts and things around like other conspiracists, that they're going to spot this, and that would be a scandal. That Neil's got satanic things.
You would have been controlled opposition if I knew that, because I knew of Neil when I was a conspiracist. Like, I knew of his mind control books. Like, so yeah, if I knew about these tattoos, because they're Sumerian as well, aren't they?
Yeah, I've got also all that shit.
I would have definitely been like, oh, look at him.
An alien.
He's controlled opposition.
Yeah,
I'd be writing blogs about you.
I've got two things left to say. One of them is some advice from you all, actually, on something that's coming up tomorrow night, but I'll mention that in a minute. And I mean, I could go on all night, but I did promise you, if you're okay for 5 minutes,
we're okay for
go for it, mate. Go for it.
Or we can come back. We're more than happy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Love to have you back. Absolutely love to have you back. And I know there's been plenty of positive comments as well. I think people listening have really enjoyed it. But I do like to keep things short, and I don't like to keep people for too long. So I will come to you, Steve, because it is time almost for the big release. And I know you've sent me a clip. So I want to hear what you've got to say. I want to play the clip, tell people where they can see it. Your channel is linked in the description, and it's your time to shine, mate. Off you go.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, I've been making a show now for a few years. I started off wanting to make something around about the time that Behind the Curve was released, and I like the sort of dry humour of The Office and that sort of thing. And I was trying to work out something to do, and I thought, well, given the nature of conspiracy theorists and how they sort of film themselves and stuff, it's quite low quality anyway. Like, I can replicate a fairly authentic version of the content they do already. So, yeah, I chose to make a mockumentary about a man who thinks the Earth is flat. I went down the road of, I think there's some different types of conspiracy theorists, and I don't think it's possible to believe in all of them and still be a sort of likable character. So he's not a 9/11 sort of guy. He's not a Holocaust denier. He's not a bit more of a sinister one, because I wanted to remain. It's quite hard to laugh at someone that's a bit of an arsehole, especially that's the main character. But yeah, like I said, I didn't come from a place where I actually wrote into the narratives. You guys have actually all seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, it's brilliant. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely great. Like, I think it's hilarious. I think that the writing's spot on. The situations, there's some visual gags in it that just made me just piss myself. It's brilliant. There's depth to it. You're absolutely right. The character is so sympathetic, and yet at the same time you want to slap him. Like, it's brilliant, brilliantly done.
I mean,
IC Spin just says, I've got to tell you, Steve, that he loves your work. I can't not tell you.
He loves
your work, as do I. He says, please tell Steve I love his work. Thank you, IC Spin. And we all do. It is fantastic. We're going to see some in a minute, but you crack on.
Yeah, well, as you guys have said it, you'll know that I've written it in a way that it's like you kind of feel a bit sorry for him, really, because this is a man who probably doesn't really have a bad bone in his body. Anything he does that might be questionable is a byproduct of his sort of paranoia and delusions, and there's kind of a reason why he got there, and he's a very isolated person, and how this is kind of, it's kind of like the conspiracy world that's made him feel a bit alive and important again, and it sort of, you know, as a bit of a look into the psychology of empathy, I suppose. Because I've always had a lot of empathy. I know some people that, you know, especially some of the people that FTFE and MC2 argue with, like, or have on their debates now. Some of them are fine. Some of them are assholes. But like, I don't think there's ever been a conversation that's gone, "You're a fucking idiot," and someone go, "Oh yeah, that's a good point. I never thought of it like that." So I do. Whilst I realise it does get to that point with some of them, you know, we can all name a few, but you know, I don't really engage with them, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah, there's a few that are assholes, but you're never going to get there from telling them they're up there, they're idiots. You're never going to. Like, I think it's healthy that the types of content that we all do. I mean, I don't mind different. It's in the same community as your guys. Like, it's productive. Actually, trying to, you know, you get some people going, oh, why are you guys so bothered if we think the Earth's flat? And it's like, it's not that we're bothered that you think that we're right and you're wrong. It's shit. You are wasting your life. Like, it's a concern thing. It's also trying to help prevent other people. And in the same way that there's so much information online about these conspiracies, you've got to have the counter arguments, you know, and it's so important, I think. And I just want to double down on the sentiment that the podcast that you guys do, the detail just has me speechless sometimes. You know, if there's anyone, it's so great to have a resource out there that if you did know someone that was talking about how a family member or something like that, you could go, right, listen to this. Listen to this, listen to this. And that goes for all the other guys as well, you know. And up until recent years, there hasn't been as much debunking as there has been conspiracy stuff. So I really enjoy being part of that community, even though it's not necessarily my content. But like, it's been a great insight onto sort of human psychology. And like I said, whilst the show technically is a comedy about a man who thinks the Earth's flat, it's not just pointing and laughing at him. And I do actually have, so this is a mockumentary pilot. It's half an hour, and I'm going to be making. There's going to be a crowdfunder for it, but I don't really need much funding to make it. I've got a bit already, so I see every reason why we should be planning. I'm planning as if I'm doing an actual series that will be with other actors, other locations, but the story I've got in mind is very, you know, it is all about the empathy of the, you know, to empathise with people that have. How their life has been affected by this sort of stuff. You know, I don't, as much as I do laugh with these comedies, I don't actually laugh at the life of people that have fallen for these things. Yeah,
it does come from a very human angle, and it is brilliant. I have seen the first episode, and it is absolutely brilliant. And I'm going to link out on my community page every time you send me a link to a new clip or something like that you want advertising. It is absolutely fantastic. When is the first episode? Where are you? Is that going to be on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, the one that you've seen. That's the only episode we've got right now. That's the pilot. So I can get crowdfunding. I can get, you know. Don't get me wrong. If someone wants to, if I get an email from Netflix and they say we'll give you this into a put it on our platform, I'm going to bite their hand off. Does that mean I want to do it full time? You know, I want to be doing it as a career and. You know, eventually you've got to ask for money for that sort of thing on YouTube, or get money some way, or take, you know, something or another. So yeah, this first episode it's the pilot for things to come. It demonstrates the sort of narrative that the direction it's going to go in. Compared to my other videos, I mean, I sort of do a lot of stuff on my channel, as you guys know, as if I'm the conspiracy theorist character, Brian, taking his videos of himself. This has got a lot less sort of lingering pauses in it because I wanted it to be a bit more. It needed to tell more in this pilot. Like we streamed it. We've actually got 3.5 hours of footage for this pilot. Most of it is not outtakes. It's just deleted scenes because it didn't add to the story that we're trying to tell in half an hour. So it was kind of heartbreaking, but at the same time, there's another 3 hours worth of this footage to look forward to. Everyone else.
I'm going to play out the show. On that, there's two things I want to say. So we're going to play out the show on the clip. I just want to say thank you to MC Chop. Fascinating to hear the mindset of a conspiracy theorist. I don't think we can learn this from a debunker. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. great. You can give level-headed insight. I'm looking forward to watching your content. So Steve's content, the Conspiracist documentary, is linked in the description. The podcast, at least this Spotify link, is linked in the description, and a YouTube channel as well for they call it Conspiracy, all linked in the description. Find them there. Finally, before we play out on your clip, Steve, I've got some advice that I would like to get from Brent and Neil. We have a different channel called the 8 out of 10 Cats channel, where we look to do debates, but we're looking to do debates in a very, very different way. Okay. So, for example, tomorrow night, I am speaking to somebody who's got in touch with Doom, the co-owner of the channel, who says that they are a conspiracy theorist. They think things like flat Earth are there to make genuine conspiracy theories look silly.
Look bad, yeah.
And he sent some information. I've not had time to read even like 10% of it, but it's very much about the government controlling everything. With it. Very much, how can I put it? Sorry. I don't come over the microphone. My daughter's got some friends over. I have no idea what this guy's going to say when I speak to him tomorrow night. I've got a feeling it's going to be kind of like next level stuff that I've never heard before. So I can't debunk it on the spot because I don't know anything about it. My aim is to try and understand from him why he believes what he believes. So my question to you is this: if I do that, would you say that is a good way to make him at least try and question where he's pulling this information from, or is it going to just validate his conspiratorial beliefs, the fact that I'm platforming him?
No, I think it's a good method to get the conspiracists to question their sources. Really keep drilling down on why that source is actually incorrect, or how many times that source has been incorrect. Like the whole Alex Jones trope of like Alex Jones is right again, kind of like that's not true at all.
No.
Like, here's 5 minutes of like let me explain exactly why he's wrong and how many times he's been wrong. Like, it doesn't take long to expose that. But I do think that is a good method, really, getting them to question their sources.
That is it's a stream over the, at least when I'm debating, my aim is always going to be not to kind of like rip people's arguments apart anymore, but more to, why do you believe, or tell me what you think's going on here, and I'll get a PowerPoint on the screen and I'll type it out as they say it, and then we can both look at it.
Yeah,
does that really make sense?
That is very effective often, because it's one of these things where, because everything is based on tropes and previous assumptions, and like we know that they killed JFK, so that we know that when so and so was killed, that was probably them as well, and blah blah. We can spot the hallmarks and the signs, man. Like, so when you start to say, and the people have done this with David Icke and stuff as before, like when you talk about the reptilians, it's like, well, what's the actual evidence? Well, someone told me this one thing once, right? And Zechariah Sitchin said, no, he didn't. Well, this bloke once told me this thing, and you know what? It's a tapestry. There's so many disparate points. You need to be able to connect the dots. And the second that they say that, you go, well, that's bollocks, isn't it? Because like that's not a coherent theory. That's you constructing a narrative out of you using bits of information like stones to step across a river. But it's not this. Not so you can get to the other side. You can get to that conclusion, but it's not solid. There's no real basically foundation to it. It's just a clever way of constructing narratives. And Benton said this numerous times. That is one of the things that sort of appeals to people about conspiracy theories, is it gives you an outlet to be creative.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to use that quote, and also what you said before about the choose your own story.
Yeah,
thing.
totally.
I think they really resonate. They're amazing. I am going to play Steve's Conspiracies clip now. Again, his channel is linked in the description. It is brilliant. It is worthy of Netflix. I have seen the pilot episode, and it is just. I sat down, I watched it with my wife. I didn't even tell her it wasn't on Netflix, and she was like, "What are we watching this on?" I said, "Oh well, somebody sent it me on WhatsApp." You know, it's like, what? So it is absolutely brilliant. Now, I'll play the clip. What I'll do when the clip is finished is I'm just going to end the stream. So I will thank you public now for what has been a chat that I could just go on for hours with. And I'd love to do this again. But like I said, I don't want to take all your Friday night off you. We're already 20 minutes over. And I just appreciate all the time you've spent tonight, all three of you. So
thank you, good, mate. Thank you very much for having us.
No problem. Right. Well, I'll say goodbye very quickly when the offer and then let you get back to your Friday night. But here is The Conspiracist, linked in the description. It's brilliant. A 1 minute 30 scene. Here we go.
So where do you think we are right now? Yeah, Brighton Beach, but more specifically, see, mainstream education will have us believe that we're floating on a spinning ball, moving at 1,000 miles an hour. That sounds a bit fucking mental to you. See, I trust my eyes. I don't need some educated scientist coming along telling me what to think. I think my own thoughts. Thank you very much. I've done my research, and why would I take the research of someone else over the research of myself? Do you know what I mean? That's like me relying on someone else's memories over my own. I've had people questioning my credentials, but they don't understand the sort of education I've had. My education was special, you know. If you look over there, you can quite clearly see France. I mean, you've got to really try hard and really want to see it and kind of imagine it's there, but you can see it.